say a school at night isn't just quiet, it's a different entity entirely. Man, they weren't kidding. The silence isn't empty, it's a heavy, breathing stillness that presses down on you, waiting. I was the only one left in the high school library, hunched over my laptop, deep into my final, monstrous history project. The clock on my screen glowed a stark 12:47 a.m. My focus was absolute, pages from ancient texts and printouts spread around me like discarded thoughts. The only sounds were the soft clack of my keyboard and the occasional, almost surgical rustle of paper as I cross-referenced dates. It felt peaceful, almost sacred, to be in such a usually bustling place, now utterly, perfectly alone. A rare quiet, a sanctuary. A faint, almost imperceptible creak from deeper in the library, near the shadowy fiction section, made my fingers pause mid-sentence. I told myself it was just the old building settling, the kind of mundane noise any empty structure makes when the night air cools. Just the old bones of the school groaning. But then, a distinct, heavy thud echoed from the floor directly above me, like something substantial had been dropped, or perhaps dragged, then dropped with finality. I held my breath, listening, every nerve ending screaming for more, but there was nothing. My heart skipped a violent beat against my ribs, then tried to push the dread away, forcing my eyes back to the glowing screen. I caught a flash of movement in my peripheral vision, a flicker of something dark and quick. It was at the very end of one of the book aisles, right where the towering shelves disappeared into the abyssal darkness. When I snapped my head up, my neck muscles protesting, there was nothing. Just the looming, silent stacks, their shadows stretching like grasping fingers. My eyes must be playing tricks on me, fatigue twisting the shadows. Sound, however, was unmistakable. A faint, intermittent scratching, like fingernails dragging across a chalkboard, but much softer, more deliberate. It came from the hallway just outside the library door, a persistent, chilling sound in the profound silence. It wasn't loud, but it was insistent, a slow, methodical scrape. My fingers froze, hovering over the keyboard, every muscle rigid. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in my ears. I slowly, painstakingly, got up from my chair, the plastic feet scraping loudly on the linoleum floor, a sound that seemed to shatter the quiet. I tiptoed to the library door, easing it open just a crack, holding my breath. The long, empty hallway stretched out into darkness, silent and utterly still. The scratching had stopped. Nothing. Just the oppressive black, punctuated by the distant, pale glow of a single emergency exit sign. I squinted, straining my eyes, but the hallway was a void. As I stood there, peering into the gloom, an intense, prickling sensation crawled up my spine, like 1,000 icy needles. I felt like I was being watched, not from the hallway, but from the abyssal darkness beyond it, from the unseen corners of the school. Like eyes, cold and ancient, were boring into me. I quickly retreated, shutting the heavy door softly, telling myself I was just overtired, my imagination playing tricks. Back at my desk, my breathing still ragged, noticed something odd, something that shattered my self-deception. My primary history textbook, which I'd left wide open to a specific annotated page, was now closed. And on its worn green cover, right in the center, was a single dark, smudged fingerprint. My hands, I knew, were clean, freshly washed. A sudden, ice-cold breath ghosted across the back of my neck, chilling me to the bone. I spun around, my chair squeaking a panicked protest on the floor. No one was there. The space behind me was empty, just air. Then a low, guttural whisper, so faint I almost thought I imagined it, seemed to emanate from the very space where the cold breath had been. It was unintelligible, a garbled jumble of sounds, but undeniably there, a sound meant only for me. Panic, raw and unadulterated, flared through every fiber of my being. That was it. I grabbed my backpack, stuffing my laptop inside haphazardly, cables tangling. My project could wait. My grade could plummet. All I needed was out. I practically sprinted towards the main library exit, desperate to reach the familiar double doors of the school's entrance, to find the cool, forgiving night air. I burst out of the library, my footsteps echoing like gunshots in the sudden, overwhelming silence of the main hallway. But something was terribly wrong. The automatic sensor lights, which should have flared on with my sudden movement, weren't turning on. The hallway was plunged into an oppressive darkness, far deeper, far more absolute than before. My phone flashlight, suddenly my only beacon, danced nervously ahead of me, a tiny, inadequate circle against the vast void. I reached the double doors of the main entrance, pushing frantically on the panic bar. They didn't budge, locked, but they were definitely unlocked when I came in earlier. I was sure of it, had even seen the custodian leave them ajar. I tried again, pushing harder, throwing my full weight against them, a desperate, frantic energy coursing through me. Nothing. I was trapped, a mouse in a monstrous maze. A distinct, rhythmic thumping started from inside the school, behind me, getting closer. Slow and heavy, like something impossibly large being dragged across the linoleum floor, each thud vibrating through the soles of my shoes. I spun, shining my phone light down the hallway. A shadow, impossibly tall and misshapen, emerged from the distant darkness, slowly, inexorably approaching. It was enormous, its form distorted and unnatural, swaying with each heavy step. I scrambled, desperately searching for somewhere, anywhere to hide. My eyes darted to the nearest classroom, its door ajar. I dove inside, wedging myself beneath a student desk, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. Peering out from under the desk, I watched the monstrous shadow pass by the classroom door, its bulk momentarily eclipsing the faint light from the windows. As it went, I got a clearer glimpse. It was carrying something, dragging it behind it with a sickening scrape. A body, maybe. My breath hitched. But then it turned its head slightly, and in that fleeting moment, in the sliver of light, I saw it. It was me. A doppelganger, another version of me, dragging something heavy and indistinct. It paused, then turned its head slowly, its eyes locking onto my classroom, directly on my hiding spot. It smiled, a cold, knowing, predatory smile, stretching its lips too wide. And then, in my own voice, clear and chilling, it whispered, "You forgot something." Moving into the dorm felt like a fresh start, a blank canvas waiting for new memories. I had no idea it would become a living nightmare, painted in shadows and whispers, a place where I was never truly alone. The first day was all excitement, hauling boxes up 3 flights of stairs, meeting my new roommate, Chloe. Chloe seemed a little quiet, her eyes often downcast, but nice enough, with a shy smile that barely touched her lips. We spent the first week decorating our cramped space, figuring out who got which side of the closet, and making tentative plans to explore the sprawling campus. It was typical freshman year stuff, all the anxieties and excitements of a new beginning, a new independence. But then I started noticing it. Chloe had a habit of just watching me, not talking, not doing anything, just silently observing me from her bed or desk. Her gaze was intense, unwavering, following my movements as I organized my books or changed into my pajamas. Bit creepy, I thought, but I chalked it up to her being shy or just thoughtful, lost in her own thoughts. Maybe she was processing the overwhelming novelty of it all. Then came the scratching. Faint, rhythmic scratching noises from the wall directly behind my bed. It usually started late at night, when Chloe was seemingly asleep, her breathing a soft, even rhythm from across the room. It sounded like something trapped, trying to get out, or maybe trying to get in, its tiny claws scoring the plaster. I'd instinctively nudge the wall, and the sound would immediately cease, leaving me with a lingering chill. My personal items started getting subtly moved. My phone, which I always left charging on my nightstand, would inexplicably be facing the wrong way, as if someone had just finished looking through it. My favorite hoodie, which I'd draped carelessly over a chair, would be found folded neatly on my pillow. Small things, easily dismissed, but they chipped away at my sense of security. I confronted Chloe about it, trying to be lighthearted, but she denied it, her eyes flashing with an unexpected intensity. "I don't touch your stuff," she retorted, her voice sharp. Then she became defensive, retreating into a shell of silence. The weirdness escalated into something more sinister. Chloe started leaving cryptic notes on my desk. Not threats, not direct words, but unsettling observations about my habits, things only someone watching me closely would know. "You always leave your window open a crack, even when it's cold, listening to the campus sounds," or vague, unnerving sentences scrawled in neat, tight handwriting like, "The walls know your secrets. They listen more closely than you think." I tried to laugh it off with other friends, but my gut was clenching tighter with each passing day. One evening, I was desperately searching for my spare phone charger, convinced I'd packed it in a forgotten box. In my haste, I accidentally rummaged through a small pile of clothes on Chloe's side of the closet, hoping she might have a spare. Tucked away beneath a stack of old t-shirts, I found an old, worn high school yearbook. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity, mixed with growing dread, compelled me to flip to her picture. Next to her photo, in tiny, almost invisible print, was a cryptic note about her unhealthy obsessions, and a disturbing mention of her disappearance from her old school mid-semester, with no further explanation. That night, I woke up to the distinct, chilling sound of heavy, shallow breathing right next to my bed, far too close. My eyes snapped open, but I froze, every instinct screaming at me to pretend to be asleep. The breathing was labored, almost a gasp. I heard a soft click, unmistakable, like a phone camera shutter. Slowly, painstakingly, I opened my eyes just a crack. Chloe was inches from my face, her eyes wide and unblinking in the dim moonlight filtering through the window, holding her phone up, taking my picture in the dark. I screamed, a guttural sound of pure terror that tore from my throat, raw and primal. She gasped, a small, choked sound, then dropped the phone to the floor with a clatter. She scrambled back to her bed, pulling the covers over her head, instantly feigning sleep, her body rigid. I bolted upright, my heart a frantic hummingbird in my chest. I grabbed my backpack, shoving my laptop inside with trembling hands, and lunged for the door, desperate to escape. But she was faster, impossibly so. She was suddenly standing in front of the door, blocking my exit, completely silent, just staring at me with those wide, unblinking eyes. Her head tilted slightly, an unnatural angle. Then she started softly humming a lullaby, a haunting, off-key tune that seemed to warp the air around us. My blood ran cold. It was the exact lullaby my grandmother used to sing to me when I was a child. My eyes darted to the phone she dropped. The screen was still lit, a beacon of horrifying truth in the dim room. The photo gallery was open. It was full of pictures of me, sleeping, studying at my desk, eating dinner in the common room. And then, a truly disturbing sequence of photos of the scratch marks on the wall behind my bed, getting deeper and deeper over time, as if she'd been meticulously documenting her own destructive, obsessive behavior. The last photo showed a freshly gouged, ragged line. She lunged, not violently, not with a punch, but with a desperate, crushing grip, trying to pull me back into the room, still humming that sickening lullaby, her breath hot on my face. I fought her off with a surge of adrenaline, broke free of her grasp, and sprinted out of the room, screaming for help at the top of my lungs, my voice ragged with terror. I hammered on door after door in the hallway, my fists raw, but everyone seemed to be asleep, or perhaps just ignoring the commotion, the frantic banging, the desperate screams. The hallway remained eerily silent otherwise. I looked back down the hallway, half expecting her to pursue me. Chloe was standing in our doorway, watching me, no longer humming, just a blank, unnerving smile plastered across her face, her eyes still unblinking. Finally, I reached the resident assistant's room, pounding on the door with desperate, frantic force. It opened, and it was Chloe, my the real Chloe. She looked at me calmly, her face etched with a look of genuine concern. "Is everything all right, dear? You're making a lot of noise. It's past 2 a.m. I looked back down the hall, my head snapping around, but the Chloe from my room was gone. The hallway was empty. My the real Chloe, had my exact room number, 307, printed on her name tag. Then my eyes caught on her phone, which she was holding casually in her hand. The wallpaper was a picture of me sleeping. Her smile, as she looked at me, was identical to the one I'd just seen on the face of my roommate. Identical. Everyone has that one weird person at school, right? The one you instinctively try to avoid, whose presence just makes your skin crawl. For me, he wasn't just weird, he was a predator in plain sight, and I, unknowingly, was his new obsession. It all started one ordinary afternoon. I was late for my after-school photography club meeting, taking a shortcut through a less used, forgotten stairwell, hoping to shave off a few minutes. The stairwell was quiet, the usual distant hum of school life muted to a faint whisper. I enjoyed the momentary solitude, the echo of my own footsteps bouncing off the concrete walls, a comforting rhythm. Then I heard other footsteps below me, slow and deliberate, coming up. A man appeared, not a student, not a teacher I recognized from any of my classes or the staff directory. He was wearing an old, ill-fitting janitor's uniform, faded and a size too large, but he didn't have a cleaning cart or a jangling ring of keys. He just had this strange, fixed stare, utterly devoid of warmth or curiosity. As he passed me on the landing, ascending while I descended, he just looked at me, unblinking, his eyes like chips of dark glass, devoid of any emotion. He didn't say a word, didn't nod a greeting. I felt an irrational chill creep up my spine, raising goosebumps on my arms. I dismissed it, telling myself he was just a new, shy janitor, maybe a bit socially awkward, but over the next few days, I kept seeing him. Always in odd, secluded places, always alone, standing by the chain-link fence, watching the sports field from a distance, loitering by a locked utility door near the boiler room, lurking in the rarely used history section of the library stacks, his presence a silent blot on the periphery. Always that same unsettling, fixed stare that seemed to pierce right through me, not at me, but through me. His proximity started to escalate, the sightings becoming more frequent, more unnerving. Once I was waiting for Friend by the main entrance after school, and he was across the courtyard, facing me, just standing perfectly still, like a statue carved from shadow. Another time, I was at my locker, fumbling with a stubborn combination, and I saw him at the far end of the hallway, a long, quiet stretch of lockers. When our gazes met across the empty space, he quickly ducked around the corner, like a cockroach scattering from a sudden burst of light. One evening, I was in the photography darkroom after hours, meticulously developing some black and white prints. It was late, well past closing, and the school was almost entirely empty, a vast, echoing tomb. The quiet was absolute, save for the gentle sloshing of chemicals in the trays and the faint whir of the ventilation fan. Then I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from the ventilation shaft directly above me. It sounded like a finger tapping glass, over and over, a slow, deliberate cadence. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just the ancient ventilation system settling, the building creaking. The tapping stopped abruptly, plunging the small room back into an oppressive silence. A moment later, a low, guttural humming started, coming from just outside the darkroom door. It was off-key, unsettling, a mournful, wordless melody that vibrated through the thin door, seeming to seep into my very bones. I froze, my breath caught in my throat, my hands hovering over a developing print. Slowly, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird, I eased open the darkroom door, a sliver of anxious light escaping. The hallway was empty, silent again, stretching into the gloom. But taped to the door at eye level was a grainy, out-of-focus photograph. It was a picture of me, taken from behind, walking through the very stairwell where I had first seen him, completely unaware. I ripped the photo down, my hands trembling violently, the paper crinkling with the force. Panic, cold and sharp, surged through me, replacing the fear with a desperate urgency. I quickly packed up my things, shoving my camera into its bag, determined to leave immediately to get out of this place. I glanced out the small, grimy window of the darkroom, which faced the school grounds. He was standing outside, directly below, looking up. He slowly raised a hand and waved. A slow, deliberate wave, his eyes fixed on mine through the glass. A chilling acknowledgement. I bolted. I burst out of the darkroom, not taking the main hallways, but weaving through classroom blocks, desperate for a side exit, any way out. I heard footsteps behind me, not running, but a steady, measured pace, closer than I thought, echoing my own panicked flight. I glanced back over my shoulder. He was there, far down the hall, just walking, his silhouette unnervingly calm. I made a desperate dash into a seldom used utility hallway. Remembering it led to a rarely locked service door at the back of the school, but as I reached the end, I found it sealed shut, locked tight with a heavy padlock. I was trapped, a dead end. I could hear his footsteps echoing in the narrow, tiled corridor, getting louder, closer, each step a hammer blow against my sanity. He turned the corner into the utility hallway, blocking my only exit, a looming, silent figure. He was holding something in his hand, something metallic that glinted wickedly under the harsh fluorescent lights. A large, rusty wrench, its edges serrated and sharp. His face was utterly devoid of expression, a blank canvas of malevolence, his eyes still those cold chips of glass. He stopped a few feet from me. He didn't raise the wrench. Instead, he slowly extended his other hand, palm up. In it, nestled in his scarred palm, was a small, tarnished silver locket. My locket. The one my grandmother had given me, the one I'd lost a month ago. A cherished family heirloom. He looked at me, his eyes strangely soft now, almost gentle, and rasped. Your grandmother told me you'd be here. I looked closer at the locket and saw, etched on the back, not my initials, but his, the same strange symbols, and a date decades old, long before I was born. Then he closed his hand around the locket, smiled, and his face seemed to shimmer, blurring, twisting, until it morphed impossibly into my grandmother's face, smiling back at me, her familiar wrinkles etched in the same cold gaze. He wasn't a janitor. He was a mask, and he wasn't here to scare me. He was here to collect me.